Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Merry late Christmas, everybody, and welcome to the RacingLab Juleløp here on Apex Racing TV. My name is Ron Mullins. Joining me in the commentary booth is Charles Bushell, and in the virtual production hall we have our old buddy Josh Wilkie. We're racing here tonight in the MX-5 Cup cars at Rudskogen. We're here for a few reasons tonight: to cap off 2023 in style, have a very good time, put on some great racing, and give some prizes away too. We'll touch on that in a little bit, but for now, let's bring in my colleague Charles. It's been quite a long time since we last talked, about 14 hours to be precise. So how have things been the past day and a half, Charles?
I mean, it's great. Looking forward to this race. I'm just, a lot of names that I'm familiar with just from, managing an esports team and seeing these guys racing. So this should be a really good race. It's a big group of cars, and I did not get a count before they went into qualifying, but it's going to be somewhere 40 to 50 cars on track. So this is going to be a fun race, and Mazda Cup racing is always pretty tightly packed anyway, so it should be a good time.
And Mazda Cup racing is always amazing, and one big marquee part of these MX-5 Cup races is a slipstream, and that's going to be pretty big going down these fairly long straight line blasts at this track. So there's a lot that will happen tonight, and we've got a lot in store for you all here. So over the next half hour, we've got a lot in store. We've got 10 minutes of qualifying, which we're currently in right now, a 20-minute long first race, and then the top 8 finishers from that first race will be inverted for the second race here. That'll be about 25 minutes long for the feature race coming up later tonight. We also have the prizes I hinted at before. The winner of tonight's feature race will get a 1,000 krona gift card to RacingLab. There'll also be a drawing of the drivers between 10th and 20th to win a pair of racing gloves, which our producer Josh said would be the gift that he would be looking out for. I'm intended to agree. I always like a good pair of gloves, even when I'm using them in the sim. And there's also going to be another drawing for the drivers finishing outside the top 20 for a 500 krona gift card. And I mean, me being the rube American in this company, I was like, you know what, I should convert this into other currencies. So for the people watching this broadcast right now that want to know what those top prizes are in the other currencies, I actually have it written down right here. So in the US, that's about $100 for the top prize. In the UK, that's about £77. For the EU, that's about 88 euros. That's also Let's see, 81,815 Angolian kwanzas, 167 Azerbaijani manats, 2,392,167 Vietnamese dong. And for anyone who managed to bypass the internet ban in Iran, the top prize here is 4,120,642 Iranian rials. I apologize to our producer Josh for not converting it into the Canadian currency. I'll just eyeball it and say it's worth about 45 bottles of maple syrup. So we've got a lot up for grabs here tonight, and I was worried that I was going to offend my producer Josh with that quote there, but he's laughing like a Catholic schoolgirl right now. So we've got a lot in store tonight, a lot of racing action. I think you hinted at your open there, Charles, that it's going to be some real action-packed stuff. We have a massive field of cars here, so I think we're going to see some good racing action. It's not a championship that we're following, so all these drivers are just racing for a good time. I think they're not really going to leave anything on track.
No, I think you're right. I think, it may just be, bragging rights, if nothing else. Like, these guys, a lot of these guys are in 2 or 3 teams. I'm sure we'll see, with the paints, you'll see very familiar paint styles for a lot of these drivers. And so it may just be, hey, I'm the best guy in the Mazda for my team, or I'm the best guy in Norway in the Mazda Cup car. So you get a little bragging rights, and, if you do well, or, just by finishing the race, you're qualifying for maybe a prize. So it's always, there's nothing wrong with that either.
I think we might see some drivers just try and take it easy and keep their cars clean, because if there's a little bit of chaos in tonight's race, with it being a massive field of MX-5 Cup cars, it won't be the most shocking development in the world. So I think keeping it clean, you might be in for a very good result. So we're in qualifying, as I said. We're about 4 minutes in, and Anders Meyer right now is at the front. You can see at a 134.818. He's a name that I recognize from the ARL GT3 trophy last season that I was able to cover here on Apex Racing TV, and he was one of the standout stars from that series. Ran in the pro category, didn't have the best championship result in the world, if my memory serves me correctly. I believe he finished second or third in the standings. I may have to fact check myself there, but he had some really good drives, especially in Donington Park, where he was he managed to get by Antonio Samarco, who dominated that season from start to finish. He managed to do that through strategy alone. I believe Apex put together a highlight of that race on our YouTube shorts here on Apex Racing TV, so if you have the time to check that out. He's a very talented driver, as is Eric Rosseth, who's managed to go up to the front now at a 134.6, so that's a very good lap from him. And really the big thing with these qualifying times is you have to have that good slipstream, because with these cars, they punch a pretty big hole in the air, but the dirty air doesn't really affect these cars too much. There's no real aerodynamic parts on these race cars to speak of. Really, the closest thing to a wing on these cars is just a front windshield. So right now, Anders Meyer is actually leapfrogged ahead of his fellow countrymen there. So a lot of drivers staying in these lap times, and you can see the left-hand side of your screen is starting to populate.
Yeah, talk about the aerodynamics. I mean, convertibles themselves are not necessarily the most dynamic cars in the world. So obviously, with these cars having no top, you just basically got the front windscreen and the roll cage to protect the driver. So yeah, they make a big hole, and you see a lot of pack racing with these cars. You'll get a couple of drivers, or 5 or 6 drivers that are fairly equally matched. They'll just stay together, and do place hopping, lap after lap, and we see it in other series here on Apex. And today's not going to be any different. I think it's going to be a really amazing race to watch. A lot of position changes. Bound to be with how many cars we got, right around 40 cars on track. Bound to be a little incident here and there, but it's a pretty wide track, so it makes for some pretty good racing.
Yeah, this track is fairly new school in its design. Certainly have very close walls there going into the braking zone of turn 10 is definitely one of them. But this track is fairly new school in its design. I was looking at racingcircus.info, the primary source for basically all of my racetrack information. And this track really hasn't been along for very long. I believe the first iteration of this track was built in 1995, if I'm not mistaken. And then it was upgraded in the 2000s to become the other track layout that we have here in iRacing today. So it's a fairly new school. A lot of that asphalt runoff area, which I think those drivers will be using religiously all throughout this race. Certainly the exits out of turn 2. That's going to be used quite a lot, as well as in turn 3 and 4 with that massive, all-expansive asphalt runoff area. So I think we're going to see a lot of these drivers use those asphalt shoulders to their advantage right now. Qualifying, you can't really use it too much because you don't want to invalidate your lap time, but we're also seeing a lot of drivers, especially in turn 1, hopping that curb. We've seen plenty of drivers whack that. Thankfully, these cars are fairly resilient when it comes to being and banging with each other and banging those curbs. So I think we might see a lot of drivers hitting that turn 1 curb, but they don't have to hit too hard to really mess with their race, especially if they're going side by side with another car.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, turn 1 and 2, that little complex there. There's a couple of little, I'd say, I don't necessarily know about technical sections, but there's a couple of little tricky points in this track. Obviously, this run right here, we've seen it with other series. You get this run going down into down the straightaway into that sweeping right-hand corner. It's really easy to just kind of miss the braking point and run wide there, carry way too much speed, lose the rear of the car, which is a little more difficult with the Mazdas. But it's still, I'm sure it's going to happen at some point in time because of just the way the track's configured. It's downhill. You get a little rise there, a little drop, and the rear gets light as we see a car spinning there coming out of that hairpin. So it makes for a little bit of a dangerous situation. So like I said, there's a couple little tricky sections here. But overall, yes, nice and wide. It's got some good runoff areas. You've got a little bit of room before you find a wall in most areas on the track, so should make for some pretty exciting racing.
This is probably a very niche and strange comparison to give, but really the first and final sections of this circuit going into turn 1 and 2, as you can see a fantastic lap time there from Angeltveld. There you can see he jumps up to the front, actually ties with Anders Meyer. So we have a tie for the pole right now. So we'll see Anders Meyer. I don't think he'll be able to respond as he's drifting his way around this track right now. That is a beautiful drift there.
Nice.
I can't say God bless America. That's awesome. God bless Norway. That is awesome. That was a brilliant drive there from Anders Meyer, but he definitely smoked his tires. I don't think he's going to be too upset at losing the pole because he's still going to be starting on the front row with this race. So I think he's just burning up those tires and laying some nice black marks down on the road. It's pretty cool to watch. Another drift coming here through turn 12, and ooh, I thought he was going to spin coming out of there, but no, he managed to hold it on beautifully. This is a fantastic display of driving from Anders Meyer. A little bit of a showing off maneuver we're seeing here from your driver. That looks like he'll be starting this race in P2.
Yeah, that was very nice driving. And yeah, I was looking at the time being scored and saw where you saw it was tied. I do have the HUD up that actually goes out to 3 decimal places, and it was 1 millisecond. Angel Vet over Meyer, an 0.25 versus an 0.26.
That is still incredibly close here for this. So getting back to the point that I was going to mention before we get the starting grid here, the first and final sections of this course kind of remind me of Oschersleben there. The final section reminds me of how Oschersleben's first section was when the track was first built, and then the first section of this track reminds me of how it is today. So we're going to get the starting grid here, and it's going to be it is going to be Helge in P1 at a 1:34.2, so that's a good lap time from him. Eric Roseth will be in P2. We'll have Olav in P3. Kim André Björklund, a name I recognize from not only the ARL GT3 trophy, but also the Radical Racing Challenge, now renamed the Radical Esports Cup here on Apex Racing TV. He'll be starting this race in 4th, and we have Christian in P5, Herzog in P6, Anders Meyer in P7, Angeltveld in P8, I believe. Let me take a look. I believe is this okay? No, this is. I got a little bit confused. Am I? Hang on. I'm getting my bearings straight here, but it's Anders Meyer and Angeltveld in P7 and P8 currently, and that's Aargaard in P9, and then Simon Andre and Livingston in P10.
Yeah, they reversed the top 8 after qualifying, so that's why you saw Meyer in the Engelbelt in 7th and 8th. So in P11 we've got Jan Skalen, and I'm very sorry for the pronunciations. Breivik in P12, Langberg and Björkaker in P14, Sani and Scarrett 15th and 16th. Ruud and Hogg on row 9, and Heimton and Olsen Leah makes up row 10.
And looking through the rest of the field, we've got Johansson in P21, Strand in P22, Thormodson in P23, and that is, I believe, Advidson, that was in P24. And that's, we'll just call him Kedril Nicholas in P25. We've got Thesang in P26, Anderson in 27th, Jensen in 28th, Kenneth Vick in P29, and then Kilo rounding at your top 30. And I'll just go through the rest of these a little bit real quick here. Landberg in P31, Kenneth Pulsrud, I apologize if I butcher that pronunciation because he's the man that we've been talking to before the start of this broadcast. He is in P32. Then it's another Kenneth that is starting in P33, Avergan in P34, Jonsson in P35, and then I'm Mahel. I deeply apologize if I butchered that pronunciation, which I very much did. And then Ryan Jr. in P37, Oddstall in P38, Storksabin in P39, and then Yevon, if I'm not mistaken, in P40. That is, I think, all the field. Oh, the starting grid, it's gone. We managed to get through it all with about 28,000 butchered pronunciations, which is kind of sad because there's only 40 cars.
Yeah, exactly right. So, but I'm from Alabama, so I butcher a lot of things. So that's not anything. It's not anything new. I get a lot of the American name wrong too. So.
Well, thankfully, me being in Philadelphia, I can shrug my shoulders and say I come from the most arrogant city in all of America. So I think that could be the excuse that I use to butcher a bunch of people's pronunciations during this broadcast. I deeply apologize. I believe some of my ancestry goes back to Scandinavia, so I deeply apologize for any butchered pronunciations that have come from this broadcast already, and any more that might come between now and the end of this broadcast in about an hour and 15 minutes. But we've still got a whole bunch of racing action ahead of us. The drivers are trying to warm up their tires. We're going to have a rolling start here going down that start-finish straight away. It's going to be a really tough run for the drivers starting in the midfield and the back. They're going to get the green flag as they're going through turn 14. That's going to be tough for them to try and get on full throttle and try and get as great of a start as they can without lighting up those rear tires and possibly going for a spin. So the drivers are heading their way around the final corner now, and we're going to get the green flag here soon. The front runners have already taken the green. They've already jumped a little bit onto the throttle, and the green flag is now out. It's a very good start there from the drivers in P1, and you can see fairly line of stern, see some 3 wide, 4 wide action farther behind. Right now, everyone's getting through solidly. Some nice moves being pulled off farther towards the back. They're going through single file, side by side. Occasionally, you can see some side by side action here, but I believe no drivers are going for some really risky moves into turn 1, which is a little bit refreshing, but we still have the rest of lap 1 to negotiate with.
Yeah, it was a very controlled start. Everybody got through turns 1 and 2 cleanly. I didn't see anybody being booed off track or having a spin. And Voss up in the lead now. So it was a great start. And so now everybody just tries to get settled in and start picking people off.
I just wanted to add this quick little note. I'm seeing everyone saying that our butchering of Norwegian pronunciations is a little bit funny. So thank you for tuning in here on Apex Racing TV, and thank you for making us feel a little bit better about our terrible pronunciations. But so far, it's a very good start here. You can see some action farther up towards the front. The other driver at the front end of the field right now is a driver, the number 3 car. That's Olav Ya in P1 currently in that number 3 car, trying to hold off Helge in P2. He managed to get the move done during this first lap, so I believe he will be leading the field to end off this first lap of this race. And you can see some shuffling farther behind. I believe that might be a mistake. Oh yeah, you can see 2 cars off farther behind. That's in the small little stretch between turns 12 and 13. So not sure what in the world happened there, but I see a missing bumper there and a bumper flying around farther behind. So we are thinking it was going to be a clean start, but farther towards the back, it certainly wasn't the case for 2 drivers.
Yeah, we'll get a replay coming up. Josh is getting it pulled up for us here, so we'll see what occurred with those 2 cars. We're coming down just to the outside, trying to go on the wide on the outside, and just ran out of room. Looks like I didn't think that he got any help from behind, so it's just a 78 car just kind of got wide, got into the front bumper, and basically pitted himself and basically wrecked both cars.
Unfortunate for the 5 because his car is totaled. You can see him trundling down pit road. I'm not sure if it was just from my perspective, but I saw his front bumper sort of levitate up into the heavens, so I'm not sure what kind of divine entity got involved in that fight there. That ended in absolute heartbreak for 2 of those drivers. Definitely the number 5, who's now towed back to the pits. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that left, actually no, the right front, I apologize, looked to be broken. I could see the gravel still on it, so unfortunately for him, it looks like his race is going to end in fairly acrimonious circumstances here. Meanwhile, that was extremely close there for Va. He managed to drop back like a rock while we were looking at that replay. He's just barely running in the top 10 currently, trying to fight for everything he has. That was a massive snap going into turn 10. That, I think, I can't even say he might have crapped himself because I think his butt was completely shut there. But that was a massive moment, especially with that tire barrier so close to the edge of the track. That could have ended an absolute heartbreak for the driver that did end lap 1 in the lead.
And that's interesting. As we were watching the replay, he kind of got shuffled back a few positions, but that was a nice move. He just took the inside of that, and when one car got wide in that corner, and so Va was able to make up that at least a spot, maybe 2 actually. So he's up to P7 now, so trying to make that comeback. Obviously, he's got pretty good pace because he was at least in the top, he was 8th starting the race before they did the invert.
Right now, we're seeing some action here with Kim Andre and Björklund trying to get the move done on Va. You can see him racing quite hard going into the very challenging turn 3 and 4 section. Extremely long. It feels like the longest corner in all of sim racing. It kind of feels like China, Shanghai International Circuit's turn 1. I remember driving on that track in the F1 games back as a small boy and just going through those corners and feeling like it was endless. So that's kind of the same feeling I get going through turns 3 and 4. But you can see some drivers farther off, up towards the front, I believe. Is that... I'm trying to look. Yeah, that's Anders Meyer there off. I believe his bumper is missing off of that Mazda Cup car of his. A number 26 driver has dropped back like a rock. I'm not sure what in the world happened, but I believe it involved Agard. So you can see Agard is dropping down the order now in the number 14 car. He's managed to regain and rejoin the track in 15th, but we're going to take a look to see what in the world happened between those two going through. I believe that was turn 8, if I'm not mistaken. So we're looking at the replay, going through the tight S section here. Anders Meyer trying to get the move done on the inside and just got a little bit of contact there, and that was, I was expecting him to get spun around, but no, that was a little bit of 3-wide action there, just some sandwich action. Unfortunately, Anders Meyer was caught in the middle of that, and it catches both of those drivers out. Meanwhile, back up towards the front, Vaz managed to set the fastest lap, so you can see he's a little bit on charge, probably feeling a little bit upset after the way things went a few moments ago, so he's managed to reclaw up his way up towards the front.
Yeah, absolutely. He's doing a great job moving back up the order. It's just, I'm watching the one part. It's Angel Vet. It's a couple of times he's basically just got bullied going into that same corner and getting forced wide. He ends up losing a couple of spots every time. So it just seems like he's got good pace everywhere else, but it's just that one corner seems to keep tripping him up.
Looking through the rest of the field, Anders Meyer, yeah, he's dropped back like a rock. So he's in the pits now. Not sure what in the world happened to him. I think he might have been able to just call it a day after the incident he had a few moments ago. We might get a replay to see what in the world happened to him this time by. Might have been just a little bit of damage there and just decide to call it a day and maybe have a drink just to whittle away the final few laps of this race. We're 6 minutes into this 20-minute affair here, so not a whole lot of time left for these drivers, but still, we haven't reached the halfway mark, still 14 minutes left to go. So I think the order that you see on the left-hand side of your screen is probably going to remain unchanged. Besides the front runner, Eric Roseth has managed to pull away. You can see that gap is about 2 seconds between him and Christian there, so that's a fairly large gap for your leader currently. He's still putting in some very competitive lap times, but Herzog right there managed to set the fastest lap at a 1:33.9, which wasn't that far off Roseth's time that last lap. So I think Roseth is in a very good position right now, maintaining that gap of about 2 seconds. But I think these two running in P2 and P3 of Christian and Herzog, what they really need to do is they need to work as a team. They need to bump draft a little bit, try not to race each other too badly in the corners, because if they start racing each other, I think Eric Roseth is just going to continue to pull away.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Yeah, it's going to be teamwork. It's we saw with Herzog and Va the last 2 laps when they were the fastest car on the track for the lap. And it's just basically being in that draft, having somebody making the hole in the air But then they needed to be working on the car in front, Christian, and as you said, bump drafting to have him moving forward as well, because otherwise it's they're running fast laps, but they're really not going anywhere. So the only way to catch him is actually helping the car in front move that much closer and try and make up that gap.
So right now, the real action is farther towards the back. You can see some shuffling there just towards the tail end of the top 10 right now. So all these drivers are getting through cleanly. I think they're trying to maintain their positions and not get involved in too much of a scuffle. I think we've reached that middle stage of the race now where these drivers are just going to relax, sit back a little bit, and really let the race come to them. I think pushing at this stage, even though it's 20 minutes, not a lot of time for these drivers to really lollygag around, as we would say. I think these drivers just have to sit back, relax a little bit, keep their cars clean with the chaos that we've seen so far this race. And I think probably by the time we hit the final few laps, definitely by the time we hit the minute 15 mark, is when we'll see these drivers turn up the whip once again.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, just going down, looking through timing and scoring, all the way down to like P26, there's really no huge gaps. It's basically anywhere from 0.3 of a second up to that gap that Rousseff holds now at about 2 seconds. But everybody else is pretty much nose to tail. So there's still a lot of pace out there on track. They need to, just like I said, just work together and try and maximize. Oh, we saw that. There's Agard. That was that inside curb. He's already, like I said, going down off the hill. So he's already light coming over that crest into a braking zone, into a light braking zone, and then pretty long right-hand corner, and just lost it really hard.
That is a very easy corner to make a mistake on. I've definitely made numerous mistakes going through that corner myself, so you can't really it's not the most shocking incident in the world, but it's still very frustrating for Agard, who was putting together a decent race, but is now dropped down to P25, if I'm not mistaken. So not a very good race one for him, but he still has his second half to try and claw back, but he has a pretty wide margin between himself and Landberg. You can see that gap is about 4 seconds as he drops back again. Maybe that is some sort of connection issue from our perspective, where he's actually just dropping back. I believe, yeah, you can see that gap has fallen back again, so he's now 41 seconds back of Eric Rousseff in P1, so not a very good series of events for him, so he's dropping down even more. Not a very good evening for him, but he'll try and claw it back here in race 2 in the other second half of this first race here. We're 7 laps in, and we've now officially hit the halfway mark. But right now it's attention, at least as far as I'm concerned, as we see Helge in the pits. Not sure what happened to him. You can see the left-hand side of your screen. Plenty of drivers have fallen out of this race, but Eric Rousseff is really driving away right now. But I think Christian and Herzog are slowly pulling in. You can see that gap a few laps ago was about 2 seconds. Now it's about 1.9, fluctuating around 1.9, 1.8. So I think slowly reeling him in, but they're going to have a pretty good turn of pace and hope for Eric Rousseff to make some sort of mistake if they're going to try and claw their way and get involved in this lead pack fight.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I agree. I think it's been kind of fluctuating, but yeah, they seem to be picking the pace up. They're running essentially the same speed as Rousseff the last lap. So if they can, it's still 9 minutes left in the race, and you're only 2 seconds behind, so a couple tenths a second per lap, and next thing you know, you're back in that slipstream. And then you're really starting to make gains on him. So that's really what they should be working toward, is just getting into that 1 second range to try and start getting that toe off the car in front.
Yeah, that 1 second barrier is going to be vital when it comes to these drivers trying to catch up. Meanwhile, right at the tail end of the top 10, you can see some tail end of the top 5, my apologies. You can see some battling between Va and Bjorklund going through the first series of corners. Bjorklund moves up into P5, so that's a pretty good and a fairly clean move from him, but you can see some drivers slowly reeling them in a little bit. At the tail end of that is Alexander Scaret, another name that I recognize from the ARL GT3 trophy. I believe he walked away with the Pro-Am title there last season, so that was a fairly good drive from him in a very chaotic season. He's running in a decent position currently running in P7, but you can see some beating and banging action there in a small little stretch between turns 4 and 5. You can see them going side by side through the S's, and Kim Andre Bjorklund loses that spot to Vaba. It's not over yet. He overshot the corner a little bit, maybe trying to get a great exit coming out of turn 8 here to get a great run going into the hairpin of turn 10.
Yeah, some really great driving, and we talk about it, in the weekend warriors, and it's the slower, I say slower cars, but more, tire pack racing, much like the Mazdas. And when these guys get side by side into a corner, they just keep fighting like that. As you can see, the gap behind them is now close to nothing. So now instead of a two-car battle, you now have a four-car battle. And so that's what happens when you start running side by side is the cars in front kind of get away a little bit, the cars behind get closer. And so now you've got more company, and there'll be, with about 7 minutes left in this first race, there'll be a four-car battle here for these positions.
I think for any of the viewers in the YouTube chat right now watching the stream here on Apex Racing TV, if Mazda MX-5 action is what you're looking for in the world of sim racing, you can check out Ray Esports later on this week. That'll be coming back. That series will be running at Lime Rock Park on Tuesday, January the 2nd. That'll be at, I think, 1 a.m. GMT, if I'm not mistaken. So really, it's a American series. So unless you want to stay up really, really early to see some fantastic action, I think it would very much be worth it, rather than staying up for the Formula One race, which started at about 1 a.m. my time at Las Vegas. But I think if you want to tune in for some MX-5 action, that would be a very good series. But if you want to see a more European timed broadcast, you can actually tune into the BRSCC Mazda Winter Cup. That's still going on here on Apex Racing TV every Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. So that's always a pretty good series. Had the privilege to commentate that at the start of the season. It was brilliant racing action, as is this continuing battle between Bjorklund and Va. They were going side by side, going into the turn 10 hairpin. That, in my opinion, is probably the trickiest corner on this track. You have a little margin for error. You have a little bit of asphalt runoff to speak of on the outside of the track, but right next to the braking zone and right next to the racing line is that tire barrier. So if you get a little bit sideways and lock up the rears, you're going to be in for a world of hurt. So I think that's probably the trickiest corner as far as I'm concerned on this whole track. So I'll ask you this here, Charles. What do you think is the trickiest corners on this track?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think, just because of the tight confines of that corner, that's probably the most dangerous and the least room for error. But, a couple of these, is like turn 1, turn 2 complex right here. It's so easy. You get just out of shape going into one. You either, you take too much of that inside curb, and it kicks you out, and then you end up, you're on the inside of 2, and you're on the inside curb, and so now you're trying to just get the car stopped. So, but I think you're right. I think 10 is a very difficult corner.
Ooh, this is some hard racing action between Herzog and Christian. They've really given up on their assault to try and catch up to Eric Rosseth. They're seeing that they're in the final 5 minutes of the race, and they've thrown all caution to the wind and were battling quite hard. They're going through the turn 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and now they're going through turn 8 into turn 9 now. So it's a very, very hard racing between these two currently. I think they've, as I said, they've completely given up hope of trying to catch up to Rosseth. The gap at the start of this lap was about 3 seconds. Now it's stretched out to about 3.5, but you can see Alexander Skorek getting a move done there on Livingston. That's a pretty solid move there going into turn 10. But I think that that battling between P2 and P3 of Herzog and Christian, Herzog has now managed to move up into that second place position, and the gap is still fairly large between himself and Rosseth. So I think Rosseth is looking at the other small little pixels in his rear view mirror here, and just seeing those two going side by side. He's being like, yes, this is exactly what I want. He could just pull away, have a Christmas cruise here in the other Christmas race here for RacingLab, and really just cruise to the finish. You can see we're about 4 minutes left in this race. So they're probably going to be taking the white flag, not this next time by, but probably the time after that. So we're in the late stages of this race currently, and Rosseth is really the man to beat. That gap is still increasing between him and Herzog, now 3.5 seconds. I nearly said 4.5. If they're battling as hard as they are now, I think it might increase to 4.5 because they are still tussling.
They are still tussling. Yeah, it's just all just so close to being side by side there in that corner. Yeah, I don't know if you noticed it or not, but we were looking at that battle from P4 to P7, those 4-car group. It took Scared that one move, which is a really nice move, late break on the inside. But now you've got Scon and Breivik, who are right on the edge of that battle as well. So now, just from having that one pass and a little side-by-side action, now it went from 4 to now 5, and looking like it may be 6 or 7 before this is all over with.
Yeah, that's it's just one of the little unique quirks and features with these cars. They're really so dependent on that mechanical grip that if you go a little bit offline, you can't just power through it like you're in a prototype car or anything like that. You just have to stick to that racing line. If you deviate from it even slightly, you're going to lose quite a lot of time. So I think before we wrap things up from this first race, I believe we're now about 2 laps from the checkered flag. I'll go back to the question we asked about the hardest corners on this circuit. Now, the dynamic really of what's the hardest corner on this track changes depending on what car you're running in. With these MX-5s, I think the sections that we've pointed out so far, the heavy braking zones going into turn 10, turn 3, that we've seen plenty of drivers make mistakes during practice qualifying and the race thus far. So I think really the dynamic really depends on what kind of car you're running in. If you're running a prototype car or you're running a open wheeler car, I think some of those corners with some quick elevation changes midway through the corner are really the ones that are going to hurt you right now. But I think turns 3 and 10 are really the trickiest ones for these drivers, but they're also the easiest. If you see a driver make a mistake ahead, you can really slip your way past, and that driver will drop back like a rock. So the action right outside, right towards the tail end of the 5 right now, involving Bjorklund. He is a camera car of this fight right now. You can see closing up quite a lot is Va going through the very long and very difficult to negotiate. I believe that is turn 7, 8, and 9 there. They're going through currently. So I think this is going to be a really tough fight. You can see Va looking, he's sneaking his wheel down the inside going into 10, but just isn't close enough. But I think Alexander Scaret right behind them is looking at those two battling and trying to get really close, really racy with each other. And I think he's eyeing up a move here. We might see him start to pounce here in the next few moments.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, and I've called a F3 race here, and the difficulty on turn 3, that coming over that little rise and then down, it's multiplied dramatically in that corner. But you know, a lot of these other corners, you're really just taking just flat out. So I completely agree with you. It really is car dependent as to what corners make it more difficult here than others.
Yeah, it's I remember driving the Super Formula around here, and I pretty much spun every single time that I went through turn 8 because it's a really tricky corner. You have that change of elevation, which is really a marquee feature of this track. If it was just completely flat, it wouldn't have too much character, but you can see the battling for the final 2 podium positions here. They've actually been battling really hard, but they've also been closing in on Rousset. I'm not sure if Rousset is really just taking it easy. I believe they're on the white flag lap, so I don't think they're going to be close enough. But that gap is about 1 second. It's decreasing really fast, so I got to wonder, is Rousset having some kind of issue? He is. You can see he's off the track, and you can see, ooh, is this maybe a strategic call for race 2? Because they do invert the top 8 after this race for Heat 2, so I think maybe that's a little bit of a strategic call for him to try and be in a better position come time for race 2. But you can see what it's meant is that Christian is now, Ole Christian is leading this race just barely over Herzog right behind. That gap is about 0.4 of a second, so unless we see some form of tussling between these two in the final 2 corners, which are really hard to make an overtake on, I think it's going to be Christian taking the win here. And you can see, oh no, that's driver spinning all over the place. I believe that's actually no, that was Bjorklund, my apologies. That was Bjorklund spinning all over the place and getting hit by a few cars, but up towards the front, Christian is going to take a very a very unexpected victory. He started this final lap of the race in second and is going to end it in first. That was a very dramatic series of events in the final lap there, and it's all it means is that it's going to be a Christian, Herzog, and Rousset podium with Va and P4 and Scaret rounding out your top 5.
Yep. So I think Josh is getting us a replay here, but that's a really interesting strategy from Rousset. We'll talk about that a little more. As we watch this battle here, this was P4 through about P8. Oh, he missed his braking point. And, that was strange. That was a strange. It's like he missed his brake, which broke early, and I don't think the car behind him. I don't think Va was expecting that early braking maneuver, and then bumped him, and then it just kind of bumped him some more once they are in the corner there.
That was very bizarre.
You know what? I think I watched him. He was actually turning in for that corner, and I think he was losing the rear and had to check up. I think that's actually what it was. I think he started losing the rear of the car and had to catch it, and then just nowhere for Va to go except just into the back of Bjorklund.
I was gonna say from our first look at that, it looked like a move that you'd see on a NASCAR short track. That was a lot of being and banging. About 5 cars made contact there in just about 5 seconds time. So that was a very dramatic series of events. And getting back to that battle up towards the front, where Eric Rosseth pulling off an interesting strategic call to let the two drivers by. I think before we get the results here, we gotta talk about that, because I think maybe it's a smart move. If it goes badly for him in race 2, I think it'll be a dumb move, but we'll just have to wait and see.
I don't know. I think he had the field. I think he had the field covered. I think he had really good pace. He was able to just kind of extend that lead out. And so, you know, if I've got, you know, well, I feel like I've got pace over the rest of the field, I may want to just go ahead and just, I say I'll start from 8th and take my chances.
Yeah, that's instead of going for all-out glory and trying to grab for two, he's looking a little bit further off. He's taking the bigger picture and seeing the opportunity to win that 1,000 krona gift card to RacingLab here. So I think that could be the reason why. Well, maybe if we get a chance to talk to him in interviews after this, I'm not sure if we'll have time for that. We'll have to ask him what he was thinking there and talk us through that strategy from him. But I think we're going to get the results here from race number 1 tonight, the 20-minute long race here. And you can see fairly spread out field everywhere up towards the front. This was Ole Christian grabbing the win here in heat number 1. Herzog in P2. Is there some kind of issue here? Because I see Va in P3. So, what in the world happened? Did he get what?
Was there a penalty involved? Where I bet if we go down, if we see he's 41 seconds behind the race leader, there might have been a penalty involved for maybe either track limits, incident limit count, or not clearing a black flag, which might have been the reason he was going so slowly.
Yeah, that'd be a really bad kick in the nuts if that kind of deal happened to him, because he was having such a commanding race, leading this race fairly comfortably. So for him to pick up a penalty for exceeding the incident point limit, that would be really unfortunate for him. But all that means Olivier Oliva is going to be finishing this race, while finishing heat 1 in P3. Scarretta in 4th, and Livingston rounding out your top 5. We'll go through and scroll to the second page here and see where Rosseth ended up. I mean, we weren't told of any sort of penalties. I'm just looking through now and can't see him. Oh, 25th. Yeah, you can see. Thank you, Josh, there. And he finishes really far behind, so 47 seconds back. So there must have been some kind of penalty. That is a very dramatic series of events, but that does explain why he was traveling very, very slowly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that. Yeah, that is a terrible way to finish a race, is getting a black flag or an incident limit on the last lap. No, nothing you can do about it except take the time penalty at the end of the race. It's very sad. It's very heartbreaking. Luckily we're not in an official league, but obviously, he has obviously had the pace to, like I said, to win that race outright. Whoa, hello. A nice replay there. I think he missed his braking point just a little bit. Yeah, it's like I said, that's a tough way to end a race. There's just nothing you can do about it. Even driving through on the last lap, coming to the start-finish line doesn't clear it for you, so you're just stuck with that 40-second penalty.
So in the brief little time that you're talking there, I saw this message in the YouTube chat that says this was from Vettel1. I apologize if I butchered that pronunciation of your username there, but that user says he told me he got a slowdown. So maybe that could have been what happened, the reason why he was going very slowly, and maybe he didn't serve that slowdown in time, because that gap was decreasing before he picked up that slowdown. So maybe he was just really desperately trying to serve that slowdown and misjudged it and didn't serve it in time and picked up the penalty. That could be the reason why that very dramatic series of events happened there towards the end of heat 1. That was it. I mean, the racing action itself was pretty good, but really just the drama to come towards the end of that is the one that's kind of leaving me a little bit with my head scratching there. So I'll take a look in the iRacing chat to see if there's any sort of stuff said by any of the drivers that could relate to that and kind of answer our questions here. But that was bizarre.
Yeah, it really was strange. And like I said, there's nothing you can really do about it at that point. But yeah, it's just kind of odd that, seems like he was off pace for a good half a lap, and it just is odd that he wasn't able to get it cleared in time to get it done. Unless it was, we've seen iRacing glitches before where you'll end up getting a 30-second slowdown and you've got 33 seconds to clear it. And so I don't know that that's ever happened here. But like I said, we've seen that before, and it's just a fluky way, things of the track. It's almost like, what we saw in our race last night, where the guy couldn't get shifted out of second gear for half a lap, and just basically ruined a podium finish for him potentially. So it's just those things that happen when you're sim racing.
Yeah, just small little technical issues or glitches or just badly written pieces of code can cost you dearly. Unfortunately for him, it seems like it cost him badly. And the other race that you mentioned there that happened last night here on Apex was the S1 Racing GT3 Sprint Series. So if you'd like to tune in to the next round of that season, that'll be on Wednesday, January 10th, if I'm not mistaken. That'll be at Daytona, the high banks of Daytona International Speedway. That'll be at 9:10 Eastern, 6:10 Pacific, and that'll be in the wee hours of the morning. I believe that'll be at 1:10 GMT. So if anyone is suffering from insomnia in this YouTube chat and would like to tune into some good GT3 action, it won't put you to sleep because that series is always incredible to watch. But the warm-up between the two races has officially ended. The drivers are lining up on the grid right now, and it's going to be Ole Christian taking the pole for this first race of this, for the second race here tonight, and that's Herzog in P2, Olav Va in P3. So this is interesting. From what I was told, that the field was going to be inverted between the first race and the second race. As it turns out, the field was just inverted from qualifying, so I'm not sure if I misread something. There's a little bit of a miscommunication, or the session wasn't set up properly. But either way, it's going to be Scorette rounding off your second row in P4. That's Simon Andre Livingston in 5th, Breivik in 6th, Landsberg in P7. That's Jan Virdar Skarin, I apologize if I killed that pronunciation. He will be in P8. Gordon Haug and Adel Ruud will round out your top 10.
Yeah, so starting on row 6, we've got Heimton and Angel Vet in P12. Yep. And so we're going to scroll to the next page here. And on row 7, we got Matt Strand and Chrisada Fasang. Thormodsen and Olsen Leah, Borkland and Johansson on row 9, Jessison and Abitsland rounds out the top 20.
I think for our own sake, trying to save face, I think we'll scroll through the rest of the grid and give you a little bit of time to look through the grid here. You can see all the drivers' names, their numbers, and you can see Eric Rosseth there starting down in P25. That's going to be a storyline that we have to follow coming into the second race there. Starting in 25th, that man is going to be on a mission to try and claw his way up through this field, possibly trying to snag a win here. I think he definitely had the pace in race number 1, but he certainly had Chaos help him, and Chaos also hurt him towards the end of that. So I think we'll just see what happens here in the next few moments. I believe the drivers are heading their way through the turn 8-9 section here. That turn 9 is really tricky. It keeps these drivers on their toes. They'd really wish if they just had a straight line blast going into the next corner, going downhill with this braking zone going into the hairpin of 10. These drivers are trying to warm up their tires as well as they can before they're going to take the green here. I think it's going to be a very dramatic race that we have on our hands. Certainly a lot to fight for and a lot to play for here. As I mentioned at the start of this broadcast, we've got a lot of prizes for these drivers to try and win if they do pretty good. The winner of this feature race that you're going to see start here in just a few moments time will be able to get a 1,000 krona gift card to RacingLab. So I think that there's a lot to fight for. So I think we might see some of these elbows bust out a little bit and some of these drivers start to beat and bang and roughing each other up. So we're going to see the Porsche pace car go in that straight line and go onto pit road to put the field in the hands of the number 33 here. We're riding on board with him, and he is going to take a very early jump there. The green flag is going to fly now, so the drivers are now officially on their way. That was a very aggressive start there from Vao. Cuts ahead of the other driver of the other car there in P3. Some side-by-side action there. I believe that is the trying to go through my live timing screen. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, as we see the rest of the field get through the first series of corners clean, that is the number 985 of Herzog moving into P3 there. So I believe he was battling there with Simon Andre and Livingston, and that moved in stick. But meanwhile, we've got Christian and Va going side by side going into turn 3 and 4. Va is trying to get the switch back, and he's going to have that inside line going into 4, and he's going to get the move done. That is a fantastic move and very cleanly executed there for Va to move into the front row spot.
Yeah, that was a fantastic switchback coming through 3 into 4-5. That was just, yeah, it was a great move, well held, proper braking, and just made that look very simple.
Yeah, that was a very cleanly executed move there, but meanwhile, going through the rest of the field, everyone has gone through clean, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just looking through my live timing screen. Eric Rosseth has already moved up into P19, so he's managed to claw through the field like a hot knife through butter so far, and I think one thing that's certainly helping his case right now is the incredible closeness of the drivers running at the front. There's no runaway stars currently. You can see 6 cars up towards the front of this field. You can cover them all with a massive blanket. 6 MX-5s and 1 camera shot there as they went through the small little stretch between turns 12 and 13 there, but it's going to be your front runner right now, Olav Va, that's going to end this first lap in the lead of the race like he did last race, if I'm not mistaken. So fingers crossed he doesn't drop like an anvil, essentially, like he did in race 1. For his sakes, he will definitely hope to not have a mistake here and avoid some positions, but he's going to be at risk of losing at least 1 spot as they go into turn 3, going down this long back straightaway, exiting turn 2. This is probably one of the fastest sections of this entire circuit here, so I think we might see some tail out action here, and some drivers trying to get past each other. Is this nearly going 3 wide going into turn 3, but it's going to be Herzog moving into P2. That was a brilliantly executed move there going into turn 3. Meanwhile, I was going to say that the gap between Christian and Livingston had increased quite a lot, but it's still fairly close, and just with that small little time there in the side-by-side action that P2 and P3 had, that battle was closed up nicely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Christian is maybe a little tentative. I think Herzog learned from Va the lap prior and saw that he was just leaving that inside open, and would just make another nice move to the inside through 3 to make that pass. And so yeah, it's still pretty much no to tail for the first 7 or so.
Yeah, so right now, a much cleaner start than the first time by. Knowing my luck, I probably just jinxed it. I think I did, because I see Landberg dropping back like a rock now, down 25th, falling out of the top 25. So right as I was saying that, we may have our first casualty from this race. I believe that was going through the very tight, twisty section towards the middle section of this track. Meanwhile, Kim Andre and Bjorklund slips by and manages to get a move done, but I think we have a replay to see what in the world happened to the driver that fell out of the race, if I'm not mistaken. And this is going to be the replay here with all these SDK graphics that you can see in the small little transition screen. This is Landberg going into turn 10. We're going to see what in the world happened to him, trying to go move down. Oh no, a little bit of contact there, and it's an absolute heartbreak for the driver. The 333 car, and he's going to be stopped on the inside there for what feels like forever, trying to merge back onto track without hitting anyone else. That is a very unfortunate series of circumstances there for that driver.
Yeah, it was, but hats off for at least being patient and waiting for a clear track so he could get the car flicked around and headed back the proper direction without causing any other incidents.
That is a very frustrating thing for these drivers, but it shows common courtesy here in the sim racing world. But right now, up towards the front, it is still mightily close as Agard is now dropping back. I believe he might have just ran a little bit wide or made some sort of mistake. I believe, actually, no, it might have been some sort of mistake, as he's now dropped out of the top 25, and you can see a lot of tire smoke there, so we might have to take a look at a replay of what in the world happened to him soon, as my voice cracks there, and there was some side-by-side action here between Herzog and Christian. You can see Herzog is maintaining that P2 spot for now, but as those two continue to battle, Vaz starting to pull away. You can see that gap is now about 0.6 of a second, teetering around a half here, and it's certainly going to close up in the next few moments, because we have these really long, flat-out blasts for these drivers to negotiate. That's always going to close it up with the powerful slipstream that these cars have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just, once again, it's just still nose to tail. You see the 33 car got a little bit of front end damage. Maybe bumped into somebody during the course of this race already. So yeah, it's just, I think everybody's being fairly patient, making moves when they see a move. We see Meyer down with the fastest lap that time at 33.88 in P18. Walker's already up to P11. You see Roseth up to 215. So, you know, Roseth's making his way up. He's still, you know, about 9 seconds behind the leader. But, you know, as long as these guys stay together, they can maybe pull a gap and kind of stretch that between P6 back to P7 and just kind of get away from the rest of the group and then fight amongst themselves for the remaining of the race. But the more they keep fighting, the more cars are going to get involved.
I'm just going through my live timing screen right now, and the driver that just set the fastest lap last time by, Anders Meyer, running in P18, has gained the most positions so far, had a very troubling first race here tonight, currently running in P18, up 17 spots from where he started. So he and Eric Roseth are the big gainers so far, both into the double digits with the amount of positions they've gained so far. So that is a very good drive from them. Olav Va, who's your front runner and has been ever since the start, he is up 2 positions from where he started from. So that's a very good run from him currently. So we'll see what in the world happens between now and the checkered flag. So we're about 6 minutes and 20 seconds into this race here, and there's still a lot to fight for, and I think there's going to be a lot of fighting here. You can see an interesting line from Vaught to try and break that slipstream going into the first corner here, but I'm taking a look at the left-hand side of your screen with these SDK graphics, and you can see there Meyer sets another fastest lap at 1:33.8. That is a brilliant lap time from him, and he gains another position to move into P17, got by Thordmanson there, but you can see now Herzog has dropped back like a rock. I think he picked up a slowdown coming out of that first series of corners, and he's going to lose even more spots now. I believe he's going to get his doors blown off by Alexander Skarek going into turn 4. Is Skarek going to be close enough to get a move done? No, he is not. For now, at least. We'll see if he tries to attempt a move here in the next few corners, but that's a very troubling series of events there for Herzog. He was putting together a fantastic race, but sadly for him, he's going to drop out of that fight for now. He's still pretty close there, and up towards the front, Va has extended that gap a little bit more. It's now about 0.2 of a second there, so fairly close. All things considered, it's actually decreased, but now we have some action here outside the top 10. You can see some side-by-side running here, going through the turn 7, 8, and 9 section.
Yeah, that was great driving right there. Looks like there's 2 natural lines through that corner. You saw one on the inside, just keeping it really tight, and then one just flaring out the outside and just kind of looping it into that second part of that corner. And both cars really just kind of looked like they held their momentum up pretty well. So it's really interesting to see that side-by-side racing there.
Yeah, that series of corners is really tricky. You just got to balance the brake and throttle and maybe do a little bit of clutch there. You got a lot of things that you have to worry about going through that section, especially in a car which is a little bit slidey. It tends to drift a little bit, as we saw Anders Meyer do that in the other qualifying session with some brilliant display of car control there, drifting through his qualifying session there. But you can see some nice side-by-side action here, and Roseth is involved in this fight, currently running in P13, so he is still clawing his way through the field like a hot knife through butter, and involved in this fight as well is Anders Meyer, currently running in P15, so just 2 cars behind him. We've got 2 of the fastest drivers on track currently. They have a pretty big gap, though, between this fight and the next one. You can see the gap between Bjorklund and Olsen is about 3 seconds, so it's a pretty big gap that you have to close if he wants to get involved in this fight. But Eric Roseth is pushing. You can see he gets a move done to move into that P12 spot, getting a move done nicely heading into turn 3 there, so he has a lot of time to claw if he wants to move his way up through this field, and he's not going to have that draft. So unlike the first race where he had a 3-second gap between him and the next car up towards the front, he's going to struggle with that 3-second gap now.
Yeah, I think you're right. And just, well, you know, I say that he was obviously setting really good pace in the first race. So, you know, I think him and Meyer are probably the 2 cars that, okay, there might be a little gap to kind of jump. It's really tight through there. I think those are the 2 cars that can make that time up. So it's just he's already closing it down. He's trying to get it under 3 seconds, like he's doing that. So he is making that time up. I will say this, we got a couple of cars that are in danger of making things a little more interesting. Kenneth Vick is about 7 or so seconds ahead of the leader, about to be lapped. So we're going to throw some lap traffic at these guys and see how everybody can cope with that as well.
I'm gonna have to ask you this question here real quick, Charles, as we see the fight up towards the front. Is Va feeling a massive amount of pressure from the back of Christian? As you can see, they're maybe going to go side by side going into turn 3. Ooh, that was a very quick change back to slot back in behind him, maybe trying to go for the move going into turn 4. Ooh, it's going to be close, but I think Va has dropped back like a rock, and he is definitely within the crutches of Ole Christensen, currently running in P2. So do you think if Va is really feeling the heat right now? Is he on the hot seat, or is his seat boiling?
Yeah, I think boiling is probably the right term. You know, because it's not just Christian. If he makes a mistake, like as we saw with Christian earlier in the race, he goes wide into a corner and gets kind of off the racing line, he's not going to lose one spot, he's going to lose 5. So he's got to be very careful, and he's got to be almost perfect for this little stretch of the race, and to see if he can make that gap. It's just difficult. You know, these cars like you see now, the line's like up to 9 or something. It's just really difficult to you know, with the way these cars draft each other, to just really get out, which is why I thought the Rousseff was kind of so out of place, because he's able to actually do that. So as we see him just kind of fanning out, and it is the top 10 there, basically in your shot. Then you've got 11. It's just a little further back. So yeah, he's got to be very careful. He's got, like I said, stay on the racing line, make the right moves, be defensive if he has to. As we see another, there's like, you know, one car is serving a slowdown there as well. So yeah, I think that's the point, is just, you know, being perfect and being defensive only when necessary, but staying on the racing line as much as you can.
That camera shot that our producer Josh put together in the small little stretch there between turns 12 and 13 was ridiculous. You could see the massive train of cars, which has died off with the slowdown that the number 1 car had to serve there, but you can still see the top 9 are separated by about 3.5 seconds, with none of them being really any far away from each other. This is still incredibly close there. You can see Christian weaving back and forth, trying to find any way to get past, but you can see Vic here farther up the road. You can see he might get involved in this fight. I think he might be able to get out of their way going down the start-finish straightaway, or maybe not. You can see that gap is still fairly large between them, as Va makes another mistake there coming through turn 12, running quite wide there, and nearly getting a move put on him going into turn 13. Runs a little bit wide there, trying to focus on having a great exit coming out of here. But I think with the lapped car of Vic farther up the road, I gotta imagine with the closing rate that they have, I don't think they're going to catch him up in a very good spot. I don't think they're going to catch them in the flat-out blast between turn 2 and 3. I think they're going to catch him in the very tight and twisty sections between turns 3 and 10. So I think that's going to be where they catch him up, and that will be really a wrench thrown in the works of this battle. You can see it's still very heated stuff here. It's died off a little bit. Some of the cars have dropped off, but it's still incredibly close. Top 7 covered by 1.7 seconds, and ooh, you could see some B&M banging between Va and Christian as they went through turn 3. I definitely saw a little bit of contact there, maybe a little bit more contact as they go into turn 4. I think Christian, as much as he has a very fast race car currently, and as much as Va is making mistake after mistake, I think he is feeling impatient right now. He is starting to see that red mist, and I think he's going to see that red mist more and more as this race develops. We're 13.5 minutes into this 25-minute race here, so we're now officially in the halfway section of this. We're in the second half, so I think Christian really needs to step up his game here. Maybe try and go for a move here, maybe just try and catch Va off guard, or maybe even put the bumper to the back of him. You can see the Vic there farther up in this, if I can spit my words out, you can see Vic farther up there in the distance, closing they are, and you can see Christian was closing in quite a lot there as they nearly made contact going through turn 12.
Yeah, great racing. He's definitely keeping the pressure on Va up front. And yeah, it's just those little mistakes. There hasn't been one big enough for Christian to be able to capitalize. But he's definitely letting him know that, hey, if you mess up too much, I am coming by you. I don't think he's to the impatient part yet, but obviously the closer we get to the checker flag, the more likely those a punt pass is going to occur, to use a NASCAR term.
Literally, they're going to try and do the punt to pass going through turn 12. That was very close, probably about a foot separating Christian's front bumper and Va's rear bumper there. But you can see in that same camera shot, you can see Vic is closing in. He's going to get involved in this fight here, and not in a good way either. I think Va is going to be wishing, just praying even, that he's going to catch him in an opportune area, because since he's going to be the first one to catch him up, and looks like he's not going to catch him up in a good area either, I think Kenneth Vic will be the the deciding factor in this battle for that 1,000 Krona gift card if they manage to take the checkered flag here in this feature race here for the RacingLab Christmas special here on Apex Racing TV. It's still pretty close here, I think, Vic. Yeah, you can see him. He is lifting off and trying to let all the drivers go by. That is great sportsmanship from the driver there, just letting them all by, and he's going to get involved in the fight farther behind. But even with that, it's still incredibly close with all of these drivers. And speaking of close/closing in, Anders Meyer and Eric Roseth are still fairly close to the cars. You can see there. Ooh, that was incredibly close there. A lot of contact, even more contact there. Livingston put the bumper to the back of Christian there. As I was about to mention, the other drivers clawing their way through the field. We've got B&M banging. I think Livingston is seeing Christian. You know what? You haven't been able to pull the move off. I'm going to instead. You can see the slipstream is becoming real important. Livingston is really being hung out to dry. Going down the start-finish straightaway. He's going to have the outside in this first corner, then the inside come the second one, but he's not going to be able to hold on to P2. He's going to lose that spot to Christian. I think you can see some damage on the front end of a lot of these Mazdas. So I think Christian needs to realize that at this stage of the race, we're about 9 minutes away from taking the checkered flag here. I think he really needs to step on the gas and get the move done here, as it looks like he's going to try and do that. Coming into 3, this is really heating up here. Oh boy, I saw a little bit of kick out action there from some of the drivers further behind, but this is really incredible stuff. So at this stage, with about 9 laps left, who do you fancy your chances here, Charles? Who do you think is going to take the checkered flag?
You can just, I mean, at this point, throw a blanket over them. It's going to be, when we get to a draft track like this, where the draft plays such an important part of the lap time. You don't look necessarily at the leader. You look at P2, maybe P3, because they're going to get such a huge run. And with the last lap, they're going to take a chance they wouldn't normally take earlier in the race. So Christian Herzog, right now, just seems like they're just a little bit quicker by making these little small mistakes that are not really hurting him as far as his position, but are adding up. And I think that they're going to force an issue probably as we get closer. I was going to go back to Roseth for just a minute. He was actually at one point right behind Bjorklund. He had went from 9 seconds back to about 6 seconds back. I think he made a mistake somewhere that allowed, maybe he got a slowdown that allowed Meyer to get by. But he's still, now it's still 4.5 seconds. These cars are now on the back of this pack. So now you've got the top 12, sitting right there. And, with him with just being 4.8 back to the leader, obviously we know he had really good pace at the start of in the first race. It's not over by, well, I say that now as he's dropped back. I guess he's got another slowdown in the serve. So yeah, it's just going to be, anybody in that top 10 or 11 still has an opportunity because, accidents or, incidents are going to happen probably at the end of this.
One battle that I'm keeping my attention on is going to be the battle for the P10 spot, because as we outlined at the start of this broadcast, with the way the prizes are worked, if you finish in the top 10 but aren't in P1, you're probably not going to get a gift. So I think these drivers are going to try and battle for that P10 spot. That could be the reason why we saw Eric Roseth drop back a little bit. It was definitely a slowdown that affected him, because you can see he's lost quite a lot of time, all things considered. But maybe it was a little bit of strategic call. Who knows? I'm just trying to throw excuses and throw stuff at the wall is the reason why he slowed down there. Yet again, I didn't see any really bad infringement of track limits there that could have given him a slowdown. But that's interesting strategic calls we might see from some of these drivers. I think the P10 spot is going to be vital there to try and have a chance to win those gloves.
Well, so that's just went in the pit.
Oh, he has. What in the world? Does he have some sort of damage? Did he maybe do did he misshift somewhere and just blow his engine up? That is even our producer Josh is confused. He looked through our telemetry and he couldn't see anything weird. Maybe there's some kind of penalty, who knows? But getting back our attention up towards the front here, you can see Va is still holding off Herzog. I believe these drivers are on the final lap, if I'm not mistaken. So I think we're going to see Herzog try and force the issue here to move into that P1 spot. He wasn't really involved in this fight for much of the race. He was running in 4th for most of it, if I'm not mistaken. But he hasn't really been involved in this front pack fight. But he is now now on the final lap of the race, and I think we might see him try and pull off a move coming into turn 10. This is going to be pretty close here. Does he try to go to the outside? It looks like he's going to try and do it. It's going to be a battle of the last late breakers here, and Va's going to hold on to that position for now, but I think we might see Herzog try and pull off some sort of move here coming into turn 12. We saw a lot of contact here at the end of last race here in Heat 1 tonight, and we're not going to see it again if I'm not mistaken. So it looks like Va, if he manages to get through this final corner here properly, I believe he is going to take the checkered flag this time by, or maybe taking the white flag this time by. But you can see this is the battle that was going on between Herzog and Christian here coming into turn 1. That is going to be close between those two, and Herzog is going to get that position there, going to have the inside line coming into turn 2, and pulls it off fairly cleanly.
Yeah, it was a good clean pass. I think this is the 25 minutes, so we still got a couple more laps to go. So still more battles left to have before the end of this race. Now you get the top 4 that are within a second of each other, and then 2 more cars another half-second back. So yeah, this race is not quite over yet, and this battle for the win is not quite over yet as well. I'm sure that there's a couple more things that'll get pulled out of the basket before it's all said and done.
Well, if this was a 20-minute race, Va would have taken the checkered flag, but that's not. It's a 25-minute long race, and I don't think he will be, because that was incredibly close there between himself and Herzog going into turn 5 there, but he just wasn't close enough to get the move done there. So I think at a track like this, which is fairly difficult to overtake with, I think that mistakes are really important there. You can see him going side by side yet again. Going into turn 10, Herzog is going to try and stick it around the outside. He's going to have that inside line going into 11 if he can hold on to it, and he does not. Now he's getting challenged by Christian there. They're going side by side going into the next corner there, and he's still going to hold it off. I think Va, even though he definitely doesn't have the fastest race car, I believe he's probably holding this train up, which is exactly why a train of MX-5s has formed in this race. I think what he is doing perfectly well all throughout this race is he's just managing to defend his position as well as he can. He's just putting his car in the perfect position. If he just has that outside line, or really the inside line coming into 2, he's then going to have the inside line going into 3. So that's really important. He knows where to position his car, and really, even though he is holding up this fight, he is holding on to that position in merit, because a lot of these drivers have tried, and a lot of them have failed to get by him. Certainly one driver that's not failing is Livingston, who's just managed to get by Scarrett. Now Scarrett is getting challenged by Gordon Haug there for the final top 5 spot there. So a little bit of action farther behind. You can see the train of cars has really formed. You can look at the left-hand side of your screen with the SDK graphics. And it's all the way back to this battle here between Björklund and Skowin for P9 and P10 really is the end of this fight. And really this just massive train of cars, a little bit broken up towards the tail end, but still the top 10 covered by about 5 seconds is really, really close. And still, if we have any sort of mistakes in the final stages, a lot can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just, these guys up front are fighting every corner, trying to get that position off of Va. He's done a great job of just, as you said, just defensive racing, holding his position, positioning his car properly to make sure that there's really no room for anybody to make a move on him. And it is, I think you're right. I think it is holding at least the two P2 and P3 up. Probably some of that has to do with, like I said, the draft, and then some of it is, they're probably maybe just a little bit faster, but you got to give your hat, give a tip of the cap to Va for managing to hold out, and that is the white flag this time.
After my very embarrassing mistake there around the minute 20 mark, we now have officially taken the white flag, so I think these drivers are going to break out their knuckles a little bit. Certainly Alexander Scarrett has, as he nudged his way past Andre Livingston there going through turn 2 there, but I think our attention should be up towards the front. It's actually spread out a little bit here, but still extremely close there. You can see they're pretty much bumper to bumper there. The gap is about less, around a quarter of a second now, spreading out a little bit, going on the brakes here. But I think Herzog, I think we might see maybe some, well, you could call it dirty tactics, you could call it hard racing, but I think we might see some of these drivers being banging bumpers, being banging doors here, because I think there's a lot up for grabs here if these drivers can take the checkered flag of this feature race here. I think Herzog is in a very good position right now. Really, I think the best, camera car right now of Ole Christian is really in a good position, because I think these two, if they battle really hard. It can end in fisticuffs, and you can see he closed up massively there and is now trying to get the move done on Herzog. They're being and banging doors exiting turn 10 there, heading into turn 11 and 12. Vaz in the good position right now, and he is still in the lead, so unless we see a massive send here from Herzog, I think it's going to be over. Yeah, you can see Christian holding him up a little bit, so that's those two battle. Vaz continuing to hold his ground and beginning to pull away. He's seeing that checkered flag in the distance, and it looks like unless something dramatic happens in the late stages like we had in Heat 1, it's going to be Olav Va taking the checkered flag here in the feature race to win the RacingLab Juleløp here on Apex Racing TV. Definitely, it wasn't a commanding win. He was very uncomfortable all throughout that race from start to finish, but he manages to take the checkered flag by over a half a second, which was not a finish that I was expecting. I was expecting to see a lot more being and banging action, but he manages to take that checkered flag, and with it, he takes that 1,000 krona gift card for RacingLab. So a very good drive for him and a very good result for him, which is fairly shocking.
Yeah, as we said, he just did a great job. He just defended from the front and was able to get the win. You know, the top 10 separated by 3.7 seconds. So it's just, you know, it was good draft racing and good hard racing. You know, they were beating and banging on the doors, and then, you know, a couple bumps here and there, but generally very clean, very competitive racing. It was a fantastic race to watch.
Couldn't have said better myself, and we have a few more stragglers that are going to take the checkered flag. Jonsson has a very late mistake there. A little bit of drifting action coming through the final corner. He is going to end this race in P30. We're following Vic, who was a little bit of a pick there in the other battle up towards the front. He's going to be taking the checkered flag in P31 tonight. Kenneth Vic there in the number 10 car. I believe the last driver we're going to have finishing the race is going to be Anderson in P32, so he's going to be taking the checkered flag in a few moments' time. And wow, that was a very strange series of events that happened all throughout tonight's racing action. You can see Anderson having a spin going through the turn 3 and 4 section there. Roseth, he's I mean, we didn't really follow up after we saw him in the pits because of the great racing action that we had up towards the front, but that's a very strange series of events that happened in Heat 1 and Heat 2 as well. So I don't really know what to think, because I think if he had clean races, I think he would have been a very good spot and a good and strong contender up towards the front. I think we have some donuts on the start-finish straight away. That or someone just had a catastrophic engine failure. You can see some rally action there. I think a lot of these drivers are burning their Mazda MX-5 tires down to the ground here. So I think some drivers celebrating regardless of where they finish, capping off a great year for RacingLab, capping off a great year for a lot of these drivers. Hopefully you, the viewers at home, had a great year too and are excited for what comes in 2024. We'll go through what's going to happen here on Apex in 2024 because we've got a lot in store. So if you want to stay up to date on everything, you can hit the subscribe button and do everything. If you've used YouTube for about 5 minutes, you know what to do. But wow, that was a very interesting series of events tonight. What do you think, Charles?
I think you're right. I think we're getting a little bit of team photos here at the end of the race as everybody's lining up on the exit of this corner, the outside of this corner. All the cars look the same to me, so yep, that's what I'm thinking is team photos. But yeah, it was a great race, and just like I said, really enjoyable. You know, obviously, I will say this: Josh does a great job. And all of our producers do a great job, but we really could have used Luis, who lives in Norway. So Luis, we could have used him if nothing else for pronunciations.
Yeah, I think it would have been nice to kind of have him as just on standby, because our pronunciations were well, I think we tried our best. That's really when I started off broadcasting here on Apex earlier this year. I was always told, you don't have to get the pronunciation exactly right, just try your best and just go with it. So I think we managed to do that, and if any drivers are really annoyed at our pronunciations, I won't be giving out my email address here on this broadcast here, but I think we tried our best with the pronunciation. It reminds me of a little bit of a story I had. When I started broadcasting here on Apex, we had a series, and I was brought in as a very last-minute replacement, and that was also the first race I ever led as a commentator, which was a little bit of a story in and of itself. My co-commentator was like, "You should lead tonight, Ron." I was like, "Oh, okay." It was like the batter coming up to pitch for the first time in in their Major League Baseball career and saying like, oh, this bat's a little heavy. So I got thrown into the deep end and butchered just about every single name pronunciation I possibly could in that preceding hour. So I think in my time here at Apex, my pronunciation game has gotten a little bit better. I'm still an American rube, so I don't think I'm the best in the world at, but who knows? I think if anyone in the YouTube chat would like to roast us of our pronunciations or said that we were doing a good job, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't mind. I know that, you know, I haven't been doing this. I've been doing this for a little while, but, you know, you know, the Norway, you know, some of these names, there's letters that I've never seen, I don't see often, so it's difficult for me. But hey, you know what? I've enjoyed it. It's been a great race. Obviously, we know a lot of these guys from either, you know, working with our teams or broadcasting in other events. So these Norwegian drivers are absolutely fantastic. And it was a great race to watch. Like I said, it was clean. It was competitive, but it was clean. So there was no, you know, what I would call dirty driving. But, you know, they still battled it to the end for in both races for the win.
I think the only dirty driving is a lot of these drivers being and banging and roughing each other up after the checkered flag. Saw some drivers crashing into each other doing donuts, but I think we're going to get the results here from the feature race here tonight as we're seeing some donuts here. And oh, there's a crash that I was talking about there. So it's going to be Oliva taking a very interesting victory, one that we were not expecting. We were expecting him to fall back, but he put on a defensive masterclass to take the checkered flag over Carl Herzog in P2. Then Ole Christian will round out your podium in third. Alexander Skoretz having a very quiet evening, but still put together a good drive to finish in P4. Simon Andre Livingston will finish this race in fifth. Anders Meyer clawing through the field fantastically to finish the race in sixth. I'll pull up my live timing screen here, but I believe, yeah, he made up 29 positions between the start and the finish. Truly an amazing drive there for Anders Meyer, which went a little bit under the radar, but he finishes this race in ninth. Gordon Haug will finish this race in seventh, as we're seeing some more drivers play bumper cars with their MX-5s and just destroy them after the checkered flag. It's kind of funny to see. Magnus will end up this race in eighth. Kemandre Bjorklund will finish this race in ninth, and then Sauen will round out your top 10.
Yeah, so in P11, Leander Angeveld, and I've messed his name up, and I apologize every single time, so at least I'm consistent. Olsen Leah in P12, Thasang in P13, Johansson 14th, Sani 15th, Arvidsson, Agard, I think that's Molly, but I'm not sure, in 18th. And so we'll get P19 and 20 here. I believe it's Thormundson and Jessison in P20. There we go.
Those are going to be the important positions there between 10 and 20th, because they're going to be in that drawing for the other gloves that any of those drivers could walk away with as their little prize here. Then Kel Nicholas will round off your field in 21st, then Landberg in 22nd, Kilo in 23rd. Kenneth Palsrud in P24, not having a very exciting day. He was really just in the background throughout most of it. He finishes his race in 24th. Magnus will round out the top 25. That's another Kenneth who will round off in 26th. Then Algrove will be in 27th. Landberg, another Landberg, in P28. Adel Rudd will finish this race in 29th. Jonsson in P30. Kenneth Vick, who is a lapped car there, he finishes at your field of the drivers to take the checkered flag. He was in 31st, as was Eric Rosseth, finishing in 32nd, who was running up towards a very good position, running in the top 10, or I believe he was actually running in the top 15. But he had a very strange incident and didn't actually, I believe he did actually take the checkered flag after leaving the pits. It must have been some sort of penalty that he picked up there that led to him dropping down the field like a rock. That's Anderson in P33, Breivik in 34th, Strand in P35, Severinsen in 36th, Espresso Ryan Jr. in P37, Odstol in 38th, 16 laps down on all these drivers. Were involved in incidents there. Storkson in 39, and then Yevon in P40, rounding out your field.
Yeah, and so all these from 21st to 40th are eligible for the draw for the 500 Krona gift card from RacingLab. So I'm sure they're looking forward to that.
Yeah, that'd be definitely a lot of stuff to buy on RacingLab. I was looking through their website earlier. As an American, I don't really go onto Norwegian sim racing websites. Also, as a broke college student, I really can't really afford any sim racing stuff. I say college student, I'm not even in college. But yeah, it's there's a lot of selection of sim racing stuff there. So if you're a sim racer from Norway, check out their stuff. Check out racinglab.no if you want to check out some of their stuff. They have some very good products from the wide world of sim racing, whether it's button boxes or steering wheels that you're after. You can check them out. So I mentioned a little bit earlier that we have a lot of stuff coming up here on Apex Racing TV once we enter the new calendar year. But before the year is up, we actually have the Radical Esports Cup coming up tomorrow here on Apex Racing TV. That'll be on Friday, December 29th at 2100 GMT, 4 p.m. EST, and 1 p.m. Pacific for any of you watching on the West Coast here. And we also have the ARA Porsche Cup. That'll be at Aragon. That'll be on Tuesday, January 2nd. That'll be at, I guess it's 2000 GMT. I'm not sure if I'm ruining the pronunciation of that correct time, but that would be when that broadcast is starting here on Apex. That'll be at Aragon. That's a pretty good racing series. I've been able to catch a lot of their broadcasts, and they put on some fine races here, much like the one we had here tonight. And if you're in the mood for some MX5 action, you can tune into the Ray Esports Racing League. That'll be at Lime Rock Park on the same day, Tuesday, January 2nd. So we have the Super Tuesday coverage here on Apex Racing TV. That'll have the MX5s and the Formula class of cars. And I believe, Charles, you might be joining me for that broadcast here in a few days' time. They'll be at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, and then that'll be 1 a.m. GMT, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not too good with the British time. And then the S1 Racing Series we mentioned earlier, that'll be around the same time, but that'll be on Wednesday, January 10th at Daytona. So we've got a lot of racing action coming up here on Apex Racing TV. The RacingLab Juleløp was one of them to round off the season and round off this year of wonderful racing action here on Apex Racing TV. I was fortunate enough to be brought into this organization back in March. I've enjoyed my time here, and I can't speak for the both of you, but I think it's been a blast covering this race. What do you think, Charles? How's the racing action tonight?
Yeah, absolutely loved it. I don't obviously don't do a lot of MX5 racing because it's just it's not the thing I'm broadcasting. Our teams, it focused on other leagues and a lot of these, but I'll see a lot of these guys this weekend for a different race with involving Norway and the UK. So it should be interesting. I'll be seeing this car track combination again. So, but no, I've enjoyed it. It's been fun. It's always a pleasure to come out and do the commentary for these. I'm fairly new at it, still only about 9 or 10 months in. But still enjoy it, and so looking forward to it. Going to be very busy this next season.
I think my thoughts exactly, and I think that just about covers everything tonight. This has been a wonderful event to be a part of, and hopefully for you, the viewer, watching this broadcast here on Apex Racing TV, it was enjoyable to watch as well. There's a lot coming up here in the new year, so if you'd like to stay up to speed on all the broadcasts coming up here on Apex Racing TV, you can hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss anything on Apex Racing TV. So I think that just about does it here for the RacingLab Juleløp. Congratulations go out to your feature race winner, Olav, taking the checkered flag, as well as that 1,000 krona gift card for RacingLab. He will definitely be putting that to good use here in a few days' time once he finally gets that. So that just about does it here for myself, Ron Mullins, Charles Bichelle joining me in the commentary booth, and the wonderful Josh Wilkie working all the cameras in the virtual production hauler. I say thank you all so much for watching. Have a very happy new year, a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you wherever it is in the not too distant future.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.